Hi, my name is Don. Tonight I'll be doing my persuasive speech. I have my note cards ready to go, and then I also have my visual aid as well as my audience members. My speech is on the NCAA and student athletes being compensated. I feel like it is the constitutional right of the student athlete to be compensated for the labor that they put in for the university, and they deserve a portion of the earnings that they help generate for these universities and the NCAA as well. Right? Imagine working a full time job while also attending school full time. Instead of working a typical 9 to 5 shift, your 40 hours are broken up to accommodate your daily class schedule. You work 2 hours before class. In between classes, you might work an additional hour. And then when your school day is done, you work an additional 3 to 4 hour shift. If there's additional work that needs to be done, those work duties might be spent doubling up the workload on the weekend. So a 4 hour shift on Saturday and a 3 hour shift on Sunday. Ultimately, you're going to work as much as possible to make sure that everything is done that needs to be done in order to put out a good product. The hard work that you put in, it starts to pay dividends, not just for the company, but for yourself as well. You're recognized as one of the leaders in your industry. When all is said and done, you and your coworkers are responsible for earning your employer millions of dollars. One day you go to pick up your paycheck. You ask your boss if there's if he has your paycheck, it's his payday too, and he looks at you and he says, "Unfortunately, we already cut a check to help pay for your education. It does cover your room and board. However, we can't really compensate you beyond that." You look at him confused because you know you've generated a bunch of money. You've made him a rich man also. Um, you're confused. You don't know what to do. So you ask if there's anybody else that you can talk to. He gives you the number to the parent company. The parent company reverts you back to him. And they say, unfortunately, they can't do anything for you. They're both making billions and billions of dollars off you. Believe it or not, this is the practice of the NCAA and their member colleges and universities. According to ESPN.com, from September of 2016 to August of 2017, which is one fiscal year, one school year, the NCAA made over $1 billion in revenue. Of that $1 billion, zero was paid out to the estimated 480,000 student athletes that participate in NCAA sports. Collegiate athletes are required to invest the same amount of time and effort as most working Americans. While there are labor laws that protect the constitutional rights of the working American citizen, there's nothing to protect the American student athlete. Billions and billions of dollars are generated by the student athlete, and none of that money is reserved for them in the form of compensation. Student athletes should not only be compensated for the money that they help generate for these universities and for the NCAA, it is their constitutional right. Ultimately, college athletics is a business and is viewed and utilized by the university and the NCAA in such a way when it comes to every single aspect of planning, strategizing, and benefiting from athletics. The only exception to the NCAA functioning as a business is when it comes to compensation for the laborer. And in this case, the laborer is a student athlete. Power Five schools and Power Five schools are the Power Five conferences. So they consist of the top athletic program earners of football and basketball. So it'd be the SEC, which has a university in Kentucky and Vanderbilt. The Pac-12, which has the University of Oregon and UCLA. In the wake of the pandemic, these Power Five schools have deemed in-class instruction unsafe, right? So the average student They're saying it's unsafe for them to go to class each day. But they're allowing for football games and practices and basketball practices to take place, and they're actually playing football. There's been multiple outbreaks of COVID within the teams at these universities, but in reality, the show must go on. These Power Five schools combined generate over $2.9 billion that goes back to the universities. And obviously the NCAA gets their cut. And even though that we know that it's probably not safe in terms of contracting the virus, they're going to continue to operate because the reality is, and according to CNN, without college football in these Power Five schools, many of these schools will have to cut non-revenue athletics. They'd have to do away with certain departments that are not beneficial to the school. They'd also have to do away with staff that would ultimately be on the chopping block. In 2014, there was a lawsuit from two former UNC Chapel Hill students, and they sued the school because they felt like they were being deprived of a meaningful education due to the demands of football and basketball, one played each sport. What they were saying is that they didn't get the opportunity to choose their classes. Their classes were being chosen for them. They didn't get the opportunity to choose their major. They were pushed by academic advisors to go into specific majors that would be easier on them and lighten their workload so that they would be at full strength for their sport. At the end of the day, the university is going to protect the athlete in such a way that it can perform and continue to produce, even if that means jeopardizing their health and safety, like is going on right now with college football. But they won't pay them because they're going to continue to hide behind the term amateurism. And hiding behind that term is what's preventing student athletes from being compensated. In the meantime, they're going to continue to exploit student athletes from profiting off of their likeness in the form of video games, apparel, and ticket sales. There's been recent court rulings that have actually sided with the athlete, and the process of compensating athletes has begun. Ed O'Bannon, a former UCLA basketball player, actually sued the NCAA. He was successful in that lawsuit. He was on the cover of a video game. They had a player, or his image rather. They had a player, built with his tendencies, his height, size, weight, number, jersey number, but he didn't receive any of the compensation. So he sued. The California courts agreed with him. The issue now is that because of the NCAA being the governing body, even though it's okay for California athletes to get paid, if it's not okay for the athletes in Arkansas to get paid, then it would be considered an unfair advantage. So until all schools are operating on the same platform, then they can't start the process of compensating all students. There's fear or pushback from those that feel like because of compensating athletes, then it's going to mess with the tradition or it interferes with the tradition that's been protected by these policies. The recent college basketball scandal has revealed that student athletes and coaches with million-dollar contracts on the line are already ready and willing to break rules to ensure compensation for themselves in the case of coaches, but then also student athletes, because of rules that won't allow them to jump directly into professional sports, are willing to risk their amateurism with under-the-table deals. If we're able to just compensate athletes, then it eliminates that whole issue. Because in reality, by compensating athletes, you run into less problems with cheating. Student athletes, if they're ensured that they're going to be compensated. They might start to stay for 4 years as opposed to chasing the money or a contract. So that's kind of where we're at right now. By allowing athletes to be compensated, we're no longer going to tiptoe around these subjects. And we can go on, but the reality is, a study by Florida International University, a recent study shows that student athletes will be more motivated to earn better grades and to achieve and maintain endorsement deals if they are allowed to receive compensation or they're allowed to make money off their image and their likeness. So with compensation, violations are likely to cease, and we can create rules and new governing that makes sense for this period of time and this athlete and the NCAA and college athletics, which have grown into $1 billion industry. My visual aid today, I'm going to use to conclude. This picture is a picture of a team that I formerly coached. This player here plays at the University of Cincinnati. This kid is a basketball player at San Diego State University. This kid here is one of the top junior college players in the country. Every single one of those kids, and I'm a college student now myself as well, but every single one of those kids in the last month has sent me a request on Cash App because they're at school without any money. But as I talk to them, I also talk to their coaches. One of their coaches just renewed a deal for like $1 million extension or a $2 million a year extension. The assistant coaches all make six figures, and they understand the plight of the athlete, but there's nothing they can do. Ultimately, the opportunity to play collegiate sports it's a privilege. The opportunity to attend these prestigious universities are also a privilege. The tradition of the hardworking student athlete is something we should continue to admire and hold in high regard. However, with time comes change, and with tradition comes modification. The pandemic has shown us that we must reevaluate the way that we're living and the way that we're thinking, because tomorrow is not guaranteed or promised. We cannot continue to exploit young athletes with the justification of tradition. We can't continue to abide by unjust rules and stipulations and persecute those who look for an alternative solution. Most importantly, we cannot deny the basic rights of an individual simply because they are a college athlete. Thank you. Have a great night.